I read papers and I was like, what do you mean you get parts? I said, well, it's not in the ground.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to live streams to the Leadership and Governance Committee meeting. I have in attendance all our members, Councillors Cypher, Nixon, Bell and Brimelcombe, and Observer Councillor Megan Daniels will return shortly, and Mayor Kerry Hayes. So, do we have any? We don't have any apologies because we have everybody here. Do we have any leaves of absence?
No.
No, thank you. So we go to the confirmation of the previous minutes of the 15th of May. Somebody move, maybe.
I didn't move those,
Second, Councillor Bell. Are there any questions about those minutes before we all in favour of the minutes? Thank you. So, Jason, business arising out of the minutes?
No further business arising, Madam Chair, relatively straightforward. We have further policies for consideration of Council today off the back of last month's framework. So no matters to follow.
Okay. So we'll go to the review of the outstanding meeting actions.
One I might comment on there, Madam Chair, is the request made to Central Queensland University. We're trying to tee up that time. I'm working with General Manager Daniel Fletcher around what he's done on smart cities to bring something more holistic back to Council. Trying to do that as quickly as we can. Once we're through the budget process, we should organise that for hopefully the July meeting.
Thank you. The others have been completed. It's the upcoming agenda items.
There are a couple of old ones there, Madam Chair, July and October. The July one certainly has been dealt with regarding the way in which we're doing the implementation of the new corporate software around the CRM modules. More discussion between myself, General Manager of Communities and General Manager of Commercial Services. We'll bring a report back on what we've done in that space and what the Council can expect in terms of the improved reporting around customer service. And the 10th of October regarding the policy change about utilising Council resources in times of disaster. Follow up with the manager responsible and get that report back to Council for the July meeting.
Very good. And the rest are just
Back on track.
Back on track then. Very good.
Could I just, with the report authors, could we get an update on authors and who's responsible?
Yes.
Please.
Others? Okay, the schedule of Central Highlands Regional Council strategic documents, page 13.
As I discussed with you, Madam Chair, that document was talked about through Council's strategy briefing. What I've discussed with the Chair councillors is bringing a calendar of when each of those strategic documents could come back before this committee on an annual cycle. A lot of this work, particularly in the corporate environment, has an annual cycle attached to it, whether that be for planning or budgeting purposes. So we met quickly yesterday and following Council's briefing on that register, we'll now set about putting that calendar in place, and it'll form part of what goes into the upcoming meeting schedule. So you can see each of those documents at least on an annual basis.
and where they sit
Yes.
seems to be one of the important issues.
There are no petitions.
No
Madam.
petitions. So we go to, has anybody got, committee recommendations? No?
No, there are no.
Any material personal interest, conflict of interest, or personal gifts and benefits? Wish.
Nothing to declare.
Nothing to declare, councillor Bell?
Nothing.
You're thinking hard about
I
it.
was, yeah.
I suppose, just as a follow-on, Madam Chair, councillors, we will continue to keep this committee appraised of all those changes that we've recently gone through in relation to the conflicts of interest changes. I know the manager government's attended the Belcara session on Friday. We'll bring a report to council on what was gained from that event. It is a continually moving piece of work at this point in time, so we'll do our best to update this committee at least on a monthly basis, if not into the full council, on how those changes are progressing.
Thank you, Jason. So we step straight into corporate services, and governance arrangements, council advisory committees.
On the back of the work that we're doing, Madam Chair, regarding the standing committees of council and the advisory committees, and the work that we've done recently in re-examining the standing orders, and also at the Chair's request, the Manager Government's put together a report here regarding our current advisory status. I might ask the managers to talk to that and any learnings that we might bring forward to propose changes, if I can. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Jason. Madam Chair, good afternoon, everyone. As Jason indicated, this report is on your agenda at the request of the Chair at the last committee meeting. And it is fairly self-explanatory, but I'll just take councillors through some steps quickly. There are 5 advisory committees, as distinct from standing committees, are advisory in nature to council, so that they are intended to not operate independently of the general meeting as standing committees do, rather give advice and make recommendations to the council. As I said, there are 5 such committees that have been established in this term of council. There are 8 other groups and committees that are either constituted separately to this organisation or have a separate head of power under a different statute. So those 8 are shown on page 17 of the report, halfway down, or are established under a different statute. So the 5, in my eyes, qualify as advisory committees as intended by the statute, are the Airport Advisory Committee, and it was first established in March 2016. It's had its terms of reference refreshed this morning. As a result of this, we've done a bit of housekeeping to get those done, and the Airport Committee looks at its terms of reference quite frequently. Important that the results of those refresh are continued to be reported to the parent council. If we consider the advisory committees to be a child of the parent council, then the advisory committees need to continue to check in with its parent from each time it meets. Other than that, its membership and terms of reference approved by the council. It meets and serves the function that the council sets for it. The Central Highlands Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee also doubles as the Regional Arts Development Fund, which plays 2 roles. The Regional Arts Development Fund is a partnership between the Queensland Government and local governments across the state. But the terms of reference that are set for that particular committee broaden it to beyond simply RADF, and it has a broader custodianship role to play for the arts and culture agenda for this region. It reports, following its meetings, it reports to the Communities Committee, so if there are recommendations for funding approval or other initiatives to take, then it reports to the Communities Standing Committee as required. The Community Planning Advisory Group most recently reset its terms of reference September 2017, having, I think, been birthed in 2010 as the original steering committee for the community planning work. And it is now the umbrella body, but still advisory to council, but the umbrella body for the various community reference groups that have been constituted around the region. So those groups feed into Community Planning Advisory Group, which in turn reports to the council's Communities Standing Committee. And as I say, its terms of reference was refreshed reasonably recently. The Emerald Saleyards Coordination Committee, again, had its terms of reference refreshed this morning, I understand. It is the replacement for what would have been a joint local government at the time, pre-amalgamation, so the Emerald Beat Downs Saleyards Board, and it would have actually operated as a local government in its own right. Obviously, upon amalgamation, it was one of the bodies amalgamated to form Central Highlands Regional Council, and the Emerald Saleyards Coordination Committee is the replacement for that creature. It continues to provide that function. Council appoints membership to that. We did so as recently as June 2016, and as I say, terms of reference were refreshed again this morning. Finally, Game Plan Advisory Committee, created a little over 12 months ago, with appointments, internal and external counsel made. Again, I guess there's been some refinement of that group over time, but similar to the others, no authority in its own right. It continues to make recommendations back to the council on that important piece of work. Beneath that are the other 8 groups that I referred to, so councillors participate on each of those groups, but none of them qualify necessarily as advisory committees as the local government regulation intends. They are either established by a separate statute, in the case of disaster management and the audit committee, or they are separate legal or other entities sponsored by others. In my research, there are no other advisory committees.
Carol, I do have another one to add there. I got a message from the chair of the committee just before we started. There exists a Ralston Coal Community Reference Group as well.
Yes.
I think we need to be added to that list. It's a complement for one there.
I'm actually the founder of that group.
Sorry, Pat.
I'm actually the founder of that group. It operates separately to local government. It's actually a creature of Ralston Coal.
Yes, but so is Ensham, isn't it?
Ensham is as well.
And that's what I say, it was established by the company.
Yeah.
So it's in that group of 8, and that's me saying
that's right.
it's not an advisory committee to the council.
No.
But for completeness, could we add the Ralston Coal to that, similar to Ensham?
We can, yes. It's not on the council list at the moment, but we absolutely can. For reasons not immediately obvious, the Ensham Resources one is on the council appointments list. I'm not sure why.
Yes, I imagine we do, because Councillor Megan Daniels was actually on that.
On Ensham. She's been appointed to it by council, whereas the Ralston Coal one, we've just always gone to it. And it hasn't been, we're not
appointed by the council to it. No, it's actually a creature of now Glencore, then Strata, now Glencore.
Yeah.
Sam Darlington and I wrote the terms of reference for it 15 years ago.
Yeah, they do still have the community grants every year, and they meet quarterly. And like, I think I've just been on there forever, and I think it was something that we actually cut out at the last round when we eliminated quite a few of the meetings that were held, and since then Ensham has started, so I don't know whether it needs tidying up or not, but the 3 councillors from that area do attend those meetings.
Yeah, voluntarily, not appointed by the council.
Yeah.
And that appears to be the distinction between the Ensham body, which invites the council to nominate someone.
We actually do give a report from council. So I don't know whether council wants to tidy that up and appoint anybody or not, or they need it, but anyway.
I would have thought unless Ralston Coal invites the council to make a nomination, councillors turn up voluntarily and voluntarily offer reports to the council as they see fit. But it operates independently of the council.
Oh, very good.
Sure. Just on the Bowen Basin Regional Roads Transport Group, can you just also involves, well, it includes actually Isaac Regional Council, Bernard Shire Council and Woorabinda Aboriginal Shire Council.
And just through the chair, the housing company there is listed, which is a board, and CHDC isn't listed, so is that an anomaly or?
Again, these are picked up from the list of appointments that were made post the election.
Well, CHDC should have been on there then.
And they can be. So the purpose of the report is to talk about advisory committees.
I realise.
None of those that we're talking about are. There might be a swag more that aren't on here.
Yeah.
If we're interested in all of those, I can do that work.
No.
But this is specifically about advisory committees, and
No.
I guess I'm just illustrating that there are lots of things that aren't advisory committees to council.
Yep.
Sure. And the Central Highlands Regional Resource Use Planning Cooperative, please. Limited.
Yeah, there's a million, there's probably another dozen that people get involved in.
Is that not the second one, last one there?
Sorry.
Yeah, sure, it's on.
But that's not there.
It's on there, but it's not, it's just called the Central Highlands Resource Use Plan, it's not named properly.
Yeah, that's
That's all.
right. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Anything else to point out there, Carl? Obviously, we've raised other groups. Have we provided sufficient information to council? Are there any questions in relation to the advisory committees that are shown?
Well, I think when, on the back page here, when it says, it's in that second paragraph, it's support of the council to maintain public confidence in decision making by ensuring that, because some of those committees were actually nominated to be a member of that committee, and that's something that I think we need to be a bit very clear about our roles and responsibilities to those committees.
And Chair, I would think as an organisation, council's primary interest is ensuring that those groups that it establishes operate the way that it intends. And I've said that this committee has a role to play in overseeing the governance of those groups. And then absolutely on those occasions where the council is invited to participate on external organisations, being sure you understand why the invitation is being made, what the purpose is there a reporting expectation back, is the council being invited as the council or are councillors being invited in their individual private capacities, just understanding all those things, because as we observe there appears to be a little bit of confusion about some of the role that the council plays with other external organisations, and there will be a litany of them. And I imagine there are lots of people, councillors and staff, who participate privately in lots of organisations as well. So it's just always been clear about being able to go back to the origin or the genesis of why the thing exists, how do we come to be involved, what is the role that we play, and that we continue to discharge those responsibilities. I suggested at the bottom of page 17 some reminders to the advisory committee. The advisory committee is about housekeeping, and my intention was just to issue that following today, just as a bit of a refresh for people. And obviously if councillors come across or are not entirely clear about the relationship between the council and other organisations, I urge you to get that clarity sought so that we're not operating at cross purposes, I guess.
I think the other point to add, Madam Chair, is following the briefing forum at Blackwater when council last met, the approach to report the recommendations and minutes of those advisory committees back separately into the general and committees of council. That was best example recently through the manager governance in putting the audit committee recommendations back before council as a separate report, and we consider that a better practice and something that we'll be taking forward so that the clear recommendations of those advisory committees are considered separately and wholly by the council or by the committees of council. That was the intention, Carl. You know, the extension, I suppose, of this piece of work was to ensure that each of those committee recommendations came back and were fully made aware to council.
Thank you.
So now go away, Carl.
Mr. Chair, there's still a fair bit of work to do in this space, isn't there? And I don't even know whether we should have a basic sort of policy type arrangement about what does this committee mean, what does that mean? You know, I mean, of personal confusion, the last council appointed me to the GP Super Clinic Board. This year we didn't do that. Sultan and Sandra Hobbs were both appointed by council to sit on that board. We didn't do it at the statutory meeting, this meeting. I think we sort of said, well, there's two people there, but how long does it last? And it's never been taken away. So I often wonder about those things and how many more of them are there around, and what should there be some sort of report or connection back? You know, and then what's council's intention while you do those things, while you appoint someone to those particular, is it to protect an asset, or is it to protect this, or is it give the council some, you know, some process in that, and where does your statutory your corporate governance responsibilities lie as you take one hat off and put another on? So I'm just thinking that I don't know if councils have done this anywhere else, but there probably needs to be some sort of smart policy of when and why we appoint people to consultancies or these groups, and how we do that, and then what responsibility and powers do we give them?
Madam Chair, two responses to Councillor Bell. In relation to the first, the mechanical matter of refreshing your appointment following an election, it is good practice to affirm all former appointments, but the practical application, in that case, yours is an appointment as a director to a company. So your registration as a director of that company will be independent of this organisation. So whilst you were nominated by the council, the GP Super Clinic will have registered you with ASIC, and you will stay registered with ASIC until you or the GP Super Clinic remove it.
There's nothing
irrespective of what the council does.
There's nothing else but ether between that.
Yes.
My appointment way back, and just you know.
So I think it's good practice that after each election, even though there might be continuing councillors and their appointments will continue to be recognised by ASIC and the like, I still think affirmation of those appointments is important. And in the main, that's probably done, but there might be some that slip through the cracks.
So at the last statutory meeting, we cut a lot out.
We cut out a lot of them.
We deliberately did, didn't we? Because there was so many nonsensy things around the whole thing. So there's something.
And if you don't intend to have a continued involvement with it, that's good housekeeping.
And I think that that's how the Glencore was cut at that stage. Yeah. And so it makes it a bit strange then when Ensham write in and ask for someone to be appointed when we've cut out another mining company that had appointees on it. So it's just, and it's time.
You've got to have consistency.
So it probably does need something.
So this is why we're doing the housekeeping, isn't it?
Yeah.
CHDC is another company that the directors of it are actually on ASIC.
Yeah,
so we are director of board.
Yes, that's correct. So even if the council, as the nominee of the director, was to say we don't want you to be the director anymore, the council doesn't necessarily have the capability to take you off the ASIC register.
No, that's right.
It can bring its influence to bear on that, but corporations law has certain scenarios where people can be added or removed as as directors of a company. My second point in response to Councillor Bell's remarks, policy in this area there'll be lots of applications of policy, there'll be lots of horses for courses and trying to achieve consistency and the like, and there's probably no universality to all of that, because as we've seen, we've had one mining company ask for a council appointment, another one doesn't. There won't always be consistency, but important for this group to try and achieve as much consistency as gives you comfort. The one thing that will be universal, however, on all occasions, where you're dealing with organisations that you're appointed to that is governed by corporations law, so companies limited by guarantee in the main and not for profit. Anyone who's a director appointed to those organisations has a fiduciary duty to that organisation, not to the organisation that appointed them, which often fascinates me about local governments, particularly appointing people to another organisation as a watchdog, when in fact their lawful obligation is to protect the interests of that organisation, not the one that sent it there to begin with, which makes the case for independent directors and other things. I'm not going to pretend it's the sole domain of local government. There's lots of private organisations that I'm involved with who send watchdog directors to other organisations, but the reality is your primary duty is to the organisation whose hat you're wearing at that time. And the reconciliation of conflicts between that organisation's interests and the one that might have sent you there is one for each individual to deal with on each of those occasions. And that's why I think you're seeing more and more recommendations about independence of directorship, including a report that will be on the Audit Committee agenda in 2 weeks' time.
That's right. Thank you. Yes.
So as a follow-up to that, Councillor Bell, would you like us to bring back a further report to a strategy conversation, highlighting what the manager government's just said, but also identifying those other committees that may have
I
been
think we need to do
removed
that, one thing, yeah.
as part of the mid-term review, for want of a better term, of the committee structures. We could do an audit of what dropped off and whether or not those need to be reconsidered at the midpoint of the term.
If other councils happy, but I think that's not bad. Start.
We can do that work.
That doesn't.
Thank you. So moving along to the policies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, you have before you a suite of policies that are being proposed in relation probably to some of those housekeeping issues that have been referenced already in the discussions today. I'll hand over to the Manager Governance to talk through what are existing and some new policies predominantly that are being put forward for Council's consideration and adoption today. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Jason. Madam Chair, councillors might recall having adopted at this committee in May the policy on policies, if you like, that sort of reset the framework for things. And against that background, we're now bringing the first swathe of revised policies to you. Some of these have been sitting around a while, just waiting for that base work to be done. There are 10 policies presented to you today, 5 of which are simply renewals, and you'll see some commentary on pages 20 and 21 and a bit over into 22 about the extent of those revisions. However, there are also 5 new policies which come about from a time when there was some effort applied a couple of years ago to writing the council's policy register, and there was a considerable amount of effort applied. Someone engaged for that task specifically, and they did a mountain of work on bringing a lot of this stuff forward. So what you will see, and in fairness to Fran Rofe, who's absent this morning feeling unwell, would have been here, and she has done the bulk of the legwork in presenting this to you. So if I was just to skip through those policies quickly, advertising spending is a statutory policy, first adopted January 2016. It's up for its 2-yearly review. No remarkable change there. Similarly, the councillor acceptable requests guidelines. the significant change there is I've just taken out the names and the photos of people, so that as it's just positions, so as positions change, we don't have to keep bringing the thing back to you.
Yes.
Every time there is a change, we'll provide a new list of names and numbers and photos, but it won't have to come before the council for approval of the of those changes. Contact with lobbyists, again, would be very rarely applied at this council. This comes about, this is part of when the introduction of the Integrity Act came around some years ago, recommendations from the Integrity Commissioner at the time. I can't imagine it's been applied here very liberally in the last 2 years, but it is up for its 2-yearly review and therefore it's on this agenda.
I did not fish.
Competitive neutrality complaints policy, again, I would think it's rather remote that Central Highlands Council will have to apply this policy in time, but it is a statutory requirement for any council that operates businesses potentially in competition with the private sector. We go through a whole range of steps at budget time about declaring where we're applying codes of competitive conduct to different businesses, and there needs to be a very visible mechanism by which an aggrieved private party can make complaints about the competitive or anti-competitive practices of the council. So that's what that policy does. It's a statutory requirement. Conflicts of interest policy number 5 have traditionally been captured in codes of conduct. So both codes of conduct for councillors, and there will be a new code of conduct for councillors. The Minister issued draft documents for all of that last week, and they will be on the next edition of this committee for your consideration. And there's also an employees code of conduct that includes conflict of interest provisions in them. As part of the Crime and Corruption Commission's review of local government over the last 12 or more months, recommendations that they have made is that conflicts of interest provisions buried in codes of conduct are not firm enough, and have strongly recommended that there be separate conflicts of interest policy. There is separate conflict of interest policy that is presented to you today as new policy. The next two on intellectual property and legislative compliance, I don't see a lot of application here necessarily, but as I say, there was some resources committed some time ago to doing these things, so I think it would be foolish that we didn't at least adopt the work that had been done previously, even though I don't see huge application here. Entertainment and hospitality policy is another one that was a reaction from government to some press about local authorities spending too much money on catering for guests and other things. It became a statutory requirement to have an entertainment and hospitality policy. This council's had one since 2011, and it's been revised in consultation with those people who do a bit of catering from time to time, right on the cue, ladies. 9 is a copyright policy, so this deals with not only the council's claims around copyright, but also our commitment to not breaching the copyright of others. And councils, particularly we have public libraries and lots of things who do wade into the copyright space from time to time, so being able to provide staff with some guidance around what's appropriate and otherwise in the copyright space will be done on the back of that policy. Finally, number 10 is a piece of work done by Tanya Rouse and her staff on the employee code of conduct, which does include some conflict of interest provisions that will be complementary to the conflict of interest policy. It replaces that was developed last or revised last in February 2012. Those 10 are the first swathe of policies to bring before you. There are more coming, but happy to answer any questions on those 10. Otherwise, seek resolution of the committee to pass those into policy, and we'll proceed with the notifications and appropriate training and knowledge for relevant people in those areas.
Can I just confirm through you, Madam Chair, that last one called employee code of conduct, in the descriptions there it says it applies to employees, councillors, contractors and volunteers. Can we take it that councillors aren't covered by the employee code of conduct?
You certainly can.
They'll be addressed in that new draft code that the state government's been
That's correct.
circulating.
Yes.
Yeah, can I just Carl, and about legislative compliance. Is there a way we can have some assurance back to the council that the organisation is meeting its legislative compliance arrangements, whether it be in any sector, environmental, and how we do that? So how does the policy ensure that all of those, I mean, I see everything's referred to the CEO and through the CEOs being allocated or just sent down to be undertaken, but the areas of legislative compliance are an area of risk, I suppose, that we all are exposed to. And I don't want to duplicate work that's not being done by the audit, but just interested in how we can have some assurance that we are complying in all areas where we, as a local government, are required to apply council operations within those rules and regulations.
Madam Chair, there's probably two responses to Councillor Bell's question. The first is, and it's very coincidental that Councillor Bell would raise that today, because the Chief Executive asked just yesterday if there could be a refresh of a report that was done 12 months ago on legislative compliance. So, to their very great credit, the Department of Local Government actually issues a template for all the various provisions that apply to local authorities that people can go through and check off. And good practice is to report that to the board in order that the board can also be satisfied. So it's my intention to send that audit committee on its way to council.
Audit committee should see it first, yeah.
The second is that this council actually subscribes to a legislative compliance service through a law firm, and I guess there's some secondary assurance there that there is external sets of eyes looking on those things. But I think the importance is that level of assurance that's provided to councillors, and that's through reporting mechanisms. So I think for us to ensure that that's done at least annually, and perhaps more frequently, and we'll take some advice from the audit committee on that frequency, so that audit committee and councillors can be satisfied that all reasonable steps are being taken to satisfy our many and varied compliance obligations.
So I just now, would we do that in the organisational business sectors, or do you think that one compliance register for the whole organisation would be adequate?
The one that's put together by the department covers a few different acts of parliament, but not all. And I guess different councils involve themselves in different businesses depending on what the scope and nature of their activities are. So for instance, South East Queensland councils don't run water businesses, but regional councils do. Some councils run airports, others don't. It just depends on the nature of. So any template is always only going to be always intended to be a one-size-fits-all, and all recipients need to know that it won't always fit, depending on your local circumstances. So we just need to be diligent about those others, and that's where the backstop of that external compliance service, I think, aids councils like Central Highlands.
Just to add to that, Madam Chair, two other points about what the manager's provided. First one, Councillor Bell, is that the external audit from the Queensland Audit Office has a range of compliance measures contained within the external audit each year. So they have again, that checklist approach that they'll go through in regard to a lot of our reporting obligations. The second opportunity for review there will be, we're entering our final year of our internal audit scope of work, and as we go to market for the forward 12 months, that will be an opportunity for us to engage a new independent internal audit function as part of their due diligence in coming into the organisation. One of their preliminary and early pieces of work would be that council's compliance with its current obligations, So there's another opportunity to review that. So in addition to what Carl said from our own processes, there's likely to be an opportunity over the next 12 to 18 months to have additional external input into that process.
Further discussion?
Just suppose I was wondering whether or not the audit committee or any other part of council reviews our policy in regards to entertainment and hospitality, particularly when it comes to the section that talks about gratuities and other things for council staff, and where that might be in a conflict in regards to, or a breach of policy, or whether we're remaining and staying within those bounds of policy. So it's just, is there a way in which we monitor that? For instance, if a person was shouted to a football game and they're also a major supplier and whatever, I as a councillor would have to declare that and have that very public. But I'm wondering how we as a council audit it.
Madam Chair, if I can, the scenario you described, Councillor Bell, is more so captured by employees' code of conduct obligations for declaration of gifts. There is a threshold for those things, but if I was invited to the Irish rugby test on Saturday night, the value of that would have been greater than the $500 threshold, and therefore I'm obliged, as a council employee under my code of conduct obligations, to declare the receipt of that gift, and the judgment about whether that can be retained or not will be made by management. Those thresholds are established such that if someone wanders across the road to a function across the road and someone shouts them a cup of coffee or something, they're not obliged to declare the minutiae of those things, even though some people, like myself, choose to. But the threshold is established so that material gifts are declared on all occasions. So that's captured outside of this policy, but under code of conduct is adopted separately.
Thank you. Another question?
That's good. No more questions. So
Those policies can be taken en masse.
Yeah,
Mass.
one resolution for all 10 if that's possible. Yeah.
Thank you. So the 10 policies are presented for adoption. So we move it that we, that's Councillor Brimble-Combe, second Councillor Cypher. Those in favour? Thank you. So we're up to.
There's a couple of reports there from the Chief Executive Officer, Madam Chair, in relation to the Financial Sustainability Summit and also the Western Queensland Local Government Association. The first one there on the Local Government Financial Sustainability Summit, there's a comprehensive report provided by the CEO there. I was aware, I thought that Councillor Brimble-Combe attended some or part of that, and may wish to add to what's been provided in that report.
I did, but I forgot my notes, sorry. I presented my notes and haven't got them. So my apologies on that. But the CEO's report is very comprehensive, except that section he didn't attend. My apologies for not bringing those notes.
There's obviously a lot of value provided, by those biennial conferences around finances and civic leaders. Councillors are happy to receive that report.
Yes. So councillors, just received that report, and we go on to the Western Queensland Local Government Association Conference.
Madam Chair, that was held locally, and I know a number of councillors were in attendance at that particular function as well. Again, comprehensive notes by the Chief Executive Officer, whether or not the Mayor or any other councillors would like to add to that mention.
As the Mayor, the outgoing chair of the, like my comment.
Well, I'm very grateful for the outgoing president. Look, it was, I suppose the comment was, you know, in terms of the Western Queensland Local Government Association, the Central Highlands has been a member of that organisation, I suppose, on a very easterly basis, but our membership is very valued, and that's you know, important to us, and we certainly have a lot of synergies with those Western local government areas, and I think over time we've always had the position of allowing each of those smaller members, and we are the bigger member in this particular organisation, to host that conference, obviously to their benefit. It's of great economic importance to their communities. We were very honoured last, 18 months ago, that we were considered to hold it this year, which we took the opportunity of doing and making sure that we reciprocated the same hospitality and I suppose organisation that each of those communities have afforded all the other visitors that come out there. So I think in terms of the content of the conference and the political, I suppose, attendance at the conference, is probably, as a regional conference, it was attended as, I think Matt Canavan made the comment that there was more senators at this particular conference than in one place outside of the party room than there has been that he's ever attended. So I think that was sort of, I guess, indicative of the importance, I suppose, of these sorts of forums, not only in regional Queensland, but certainly from a political perspective in the next 12 months. And there will be a federal election. I think if parties are canvassing the regions for different reasons, the reality is that was a perfect opportunity, and they were certainly there. So I think anecdotally from other councillors that attended the conference, that had the opportunity of talking to, certainly to me and other councillors, they considered it probably to be one of the best conferences they'd attended. And with the greatest respect, we intended it to be that way. We certainly have a lot of resources here that some of those other local government areas don't have. And we certainly need to thank a lot of of our staff here and organisers and volunteers that helped put that together, and we did that at the appropriate time. It was, I think in terms of content, it was we're well participated in. I think it touched a chord with most of those councils. As you can appreciate, there are some significantly different issues that we have, but there's some commonality. And I think in terms of advocacy, those councils probably have more access to politicians of all persuasions over those couple of days as they would normally have possibly in a year. So in that respect, it was very successful, and we're grateful LJQ staff were here as well to make sure that they were represented, and I think the activities that we provided pretty well received. So I certainly would take the opportunity of thanking our council for, obviously, there was some cost involved, and we're certainly happy to contribute. And it was greatly appreciated. So I think it was a success, I suppose, by your description here. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly. Thank you.
So just again, receive that report?
Yeah, receive that report.
No.
Thank you. So
departmental updates, Madam Chair, at point 14. That information was provided to council yesterday through the strategy briefing forum. That's really just a duplicate of that information. Doesn't require further discussing here.
right, thank you. So any general business, please? No, thank you. Right, we'll move in.
General business?
Sorry?
General business?
General business.
Right. I did have one in regards to employees, but I might just take that offline with Clarky. Sorry, with
Mrs. Rouse.
yeah, it might be better if I take that offline. Yeah.
So no other general business. So we are going to move into closed session. So somebody move. Thank Councillor Nixon, second Councillor Duncan. Those in favour? Thank you. Yeah.